so much for coming out. Thank you to all the previous speakers. My name is Aaron, and I'm here with PIMP, which is a transnational weapons organization that's been around since the invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan, organizing to resist U.S. imperialism and move resources to people's needs. At a moment when people in this country are struggling to afford groceries, rent, and healthcare, and climate disasters are hitting our communities harder than ever, the U.S. government is choosing escalation and militarism over people's needs, which is nothing new, of course. As we speak, an aircraft carrier strike group is sitting off the coast of Venezuela. The U.S. has already carried out around 20 strikes on small boats, killing nearly 80 people. As usual, the U.S. government is not being honest about why it's beating the war drums. And its own agencies disprove this narrative. We're told that this is about quote-unquote drug trafficking. Except the DEA, the Pentagon, the State Department all agree that Venezuela doesn't produce fentanyl or cocaine. Less than 5% of global cocaine passes through Venezuela, and that small amount goes to Europe, not the U.S. And so the pretext simply just does not match the facts. The cartel narrative doesn't match the facts either. In 20 years of DEA threat assessments, the so-called Cartel de los Solos has never been mentioned once. This year's report has 13 pages on criminal organizations and still doesn't mention it. The only group cited is small-scale traffickers, not a major cartel, not a national threat, nothing that justifies an aircraft carrier, as nothing does. So, if this isn't about drugs, we have to go understand what's actually going on. Because this is not about democracy either, just as the invasion of Iraq was not about weapons of mass destruction. We know that Venezuela is being targeted because it sits on enormous natural resources, the world's largest oil reserves, significant natural gas, and key minerals. And for 20 years, it has taken an independent socialist path, resisting global capitalism and imperialism, building regional alliances like ALBA and CELAC, rejecting U.S. control in Latin America, and taking political positions like breaking ties with Israel in 2008 that Washington does not like. All of this is also part of a new Cold War against China, where the U.S. does not care where its boots step on to win. Every single day that we are told that we don't have the money to take care of our own people. 40 million people in the U.S. depend on SNAP to eat. 1 in 10 U.S. children lives in poverty. Hundreds of thousands of families are one rent increase away from homelessness. But somehow there's always money for war. Money for aircraft carriers. Money for missile strikes. Money for a military presence thousands of miles from U.S. shores. Money to establish a new Monroe Doctrine in the region that claims Latin America and the Caribbean as its own backyard, including its suffocating blockade in Cuba, endless sanctions on Nicaragua, the continued occupation and militarization of Puerto Rico and Haiti, coups going back decades, threats against Mexico, sanctions against Gustavo Petro, everything that previous speakers have covered. It is our responsibility from within the belly of the beast to stand in solidarity with the rest of the region who are rising up against this intervention. This is an attempt by the U.S. to force submission and robbery. And if the gates are opened, it could be catastrophic for the region. We demand that the U.S. stays out of Venezuela and lifts sanctions that make plans like its National Climate Plan impossible, the Law of the Homeland Plan that commits to eco-socialism, climate adaptation, protecting waters, conserving forests, and reducing emissions. But you cannot transition away from oil when sanctions block investment, access to revenue, and access to technology and collapse revenue. We've seen how Hurricane Melissa has caused mass destruction across the Caribbean as the U.S. militarizes the region. Decades of destabilization, debt traps on countries like Jamaica, and sanctions on Cuba that has made the destruction infinitely worse, despite Cuba's success in protecting its people with zero deaths reported. This is why we demand the U.S. out of the region, so countries can prep for the future ahead, and so that the holistic climate plans of countries like Venezuela and Cuba to prepare for environmental emergency can be realized, so that people can be put first. We stand in solidarity with the people of Venezuela who do not want this imperialist intervention. Across political divides, Venezuelans reject foreign intervention. After years of economic pressure and political destabilization, Venezuelans want sovereignty, not foreign military action and crushing sanctions. So our message today is not conditional, not transactional. It is moral, it is straightforward, It is firm, and it is the struggle of anyone who cares for humanity. War on Venezuela is unacceptable. No lies justify it. No pretext makes it necessary. No political agenda makes it legitimate. Not now, not ever, and not in our name. So what we demand is simple respect for sovereignty. And that begins with saying clearly today and every day, hands off Venezuela, U.S. out of Latin America, U.S. out of the Caribbean, and U.S. out of everywhere.